Live streaming is on.
Hello, world. My name is Gerry Fialka. It is November 27, 2020. We want to thank Clinton Ignatoff for facilitating us today in being the wise netizen he is. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Sasha Grafit. Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you.
The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Oh God, here we go. All right. I think magic is the answer. If you don't have magic in your life, I mean, you're just living in boring reality. So that's my answer.
That's a good answer. What is your favorite form of information? How information comes into you?
My favorite form of information is love. When people when people talk to me or communicate with me with a loving and caring attitude, whether it's a book and it's a dead person setting down their ideas with love, or it's a movie and the people really love what they're doing, or it's just a random person on the street giving me some love as they talk to me. That's how I like to get it.
That is good. Now, why do humans collect or gather information?
I think because we're living in a state of not knowing. We're born into this world not knowing, and when we die, we basically spill out everything we've ever learned. And while we're alive, we just try to piece together, what it means to be, what it means to be a human being. And God, I mean, yeah, it's just it's our way of feeding this existence and piecing together the puzzle of what it means to be human.
That was an amazing answer. We could go on tangents from that answer alone for hours, but I'm going to go with the next scripted question, which is this need or want to collect information innate in humans, or did humans invent it?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely innate. It is not a human invention. I think in the animal kingdom, you see animals constantly gathering information about their surroundings. Just think about how a cat walks around the room, touching everything, seeing, does this wobble? Does this make a noise? Can I eat this? This is our basic drive of being a living thing, is learning, what in this world has magical and wonderful possibilities, and the only way to get that is by pushing the button.
Oh man, I love that terminology because I don't know how to push buttons, but thank God we got Clinton to know which button to push. And but you implied that your cat has the word information in her or in the cat's vocabulary or consciousness. Isn't that anthropomorphizing our language on the cat's world?
Yeah, I mean, if you're really married to that term information, but what is really information? We'll say something like data. I mean, atoms exchange data when two electromagnetic fields rub against each other. There's data being exchanged. So I'm sure in the cat world, the word for information is something like meow, which I'm mispronouncing, but.
I'm glad you're sure of that. Yeah, you're sure of that. That just like you just anthropomorphized the word information on atoms too. Hey, you're good. You get this. We're just having fun here. We're just funning
Oh
along.
yeah.
Okay. No, that was really good. Okay. Sasha,
If
do
if you want to, yeah.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you want to go on a very very quick tangent, I have a thought about information that has been rolling around in my head for a while, which is that we live in what's called this information age, and information is pretty much limitless. Uh, Anyone can access all the information in the world at any time, and I think that in this reality or paradigm, what we would call ignorance is not a lack of knowledge or a lack of information, but a lack of curiosity.
Yeah. No, that's perfect because we already know our mantras from Frank Zappa, who appeared in one of your ads. Boy, that estate's going to get your ass for doing that. Did you put Frank Zappa in one of your ads, really, for smoking? I saw that on one of your websites.
Yeah, that's right.
You
Wow,
didn't.
you really did.
Yeah. Yeah, right on, dude. But that estate's going to get your ass if you make money off that. Anyways, I'm just hassling you. But this whole thing, he said that ignorance, stupidity, whatever you want to call it, is the building block of the universe. That oxygen is not the building block of the universe. It's not knowing. And that's why I'm asking all these stupid questions, because I don't know. So why not ask an intelligent person like you? So that was very good. Do thoughts create do thoughts create emotions? One thing, can you turn up your sound a little or speak louder?
I'll speak louder. Yeah, I'm kind of
That's good. Your sound's a little low, but I'm loving your answers. You're doing great. Do thoughts create emotions?
Yeah, what I'll tell you is I think it's not even thoughts that create emotions, but it's objects that create emotions, and our thoughts are sort of they're like a simulation of an object. But I know you like T.S. Eliot. I've seen you mention him in your other interviews. The T.S. Eliot's idea of the objective correlative, which is that you can create the illusion of emotion in a text by essentially referencing evocative objects. And I think our whole emotional construct is just it's a combination of the objects that we see that are a sort of they're a code in the real world that runs our little algorithm and has our chemical reactions in our bodies coalesce.
Dude, that was amazing. You touched on everything in the universe right there. What's the word after objective that TS says? And spell it. Objective what?
Objective correlative. correlative. And he mentions it in his essay Hamlet, where he says that Hamlet lacks objective correlative, and that he kind of just acts according to what the story needs, but his emotions are not evoked by like true objects in the constructed universe. And I'm just paraphrasing Eliot here.
Dude, that's all I do is paraphrase, and I love it because McLuhan loved T.S. Eliot's auditory imagination. That's another TS, but we'll get back to TS. Indeed, a wise human being.
Oh, for sure.
Sasha, do you more pursue meaning or more pursue happiness?
100% in favor of happiness. If you, I mean, I think if you're pursuing happiness, meaning will work its way in there as a condiment or a sauce on the side. But if you just have meaning and no happiness, I mean, what have you got? It's just you got a little, a little big ego.
A little big ego, man. That's right. So this is what I learned from Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, that happiness ends and meaning lasts. So if me and you share an ice cream cone, we'll be happy, tastes good, and then we had a great talk while we were sharing it. The ice cream cone ends, but the meaning of our talk lasts. So that's sort of where that that word, the wording on that question comes from. But you did it well. What's faster, Sasha? The speed of light or the speed of thought?
Whew. Well, light works. What we call the speed of light is actually, we like to think of it as a constant, and yet one of my favorite little tidbits of knowledge I have is that about 10 years ago, a lady in Harvard froze light in an absolute zero container about half a meter long, and there's a piece of light in there traveling, or it's close to absolute zero, and there's a piece of light in there traveling. It's going to take about 100 years for it to travel that half meter. So speed of light can actually be quite slow, and the speed of thought, which is always contained in its own medium, I think on average is faster.
That's good. We kick light's ass, man. We're bad. Okay. You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. That's Audre Lorde, the poet. Yvonne Rainer, the dancer, responded, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest? It doesn't have to have anything to do with the two quotes, or it can, your choice.
Well, I would say to Audre Lorde that the Russian Revolution disproves that when you think about all of those people coming into the serfs coming into the master's house and doing quite a good job of dismantling it with all the hammers and sickles they found in the shed.
Right on. We want revolution. Yeah, we like revolution. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. So you're asking how can we apply those concepts to the modern world or a current situation?
The question is simple. What new tool do you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, we have who are the masters today is the people who run the tools of mass communication, right? Oh, our masters are Google and Facebook right now, and yet the only way that they can be dismantled is with those very platforms, and I think we do quite a fine job of it. Um, you know, Basically, go on Facebook and you'll see articles about how bad Facebook is right on there, and that does create a new reality. So we have lots of tools, and they're so powerful that they are out of control of their creators, and it's up to us to use them and create them in what we think is a more appropriate image.
Really well done. Marcia McLuhan learned from a poet, Ezra Pound, that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting the hidden psychic effects of what we invent. So, like when you say Facebook and Google, are you talking about the people who run those or the tools themselves? Because the tools themselves.
Well,
You're saying what?
I was saying the tools themselves even more than the people.
That's good. Okay,
that's
so
a rotating.
no, that's really good because it's all what we talked about on our first meeting was how humans invent things to extend their humanness. So we invented Facebook and Google to extend some humanness. Now, to finish this question, we look to the artist and the writers to uncover the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so that we can learn to cope with what we don't like about those inventions. And McLuhan probed how we look to the artist to uncover these hidden psychic effects, but we still ignore the hidden psychic effects. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists reveal them to us?
This is an amazing question, Gerry. I have to say, on one end, I do want to comment on that word antenna. It's not just a broadcasting instrument. If you think about the insect antenna, it is an actual exploration instrument that probes out something beyond our immediate sensory capabilities. And I think why we need the artists is because they are people who create the time and the space to actually think deeply about something, while so much of the world kind of runs, I don't want to say on autopilot, but using these heuristics of just, like, I got to get through my day, I have to, make this sale. And it's the artist who gets to sit back and think, what's the deeper meaning of this? But yeah, sorry. But back to the thrust of your question, which is why do we ignore?
No,
I think
that
artists
hold on.
aren't doing enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, I just want to say, I think if we're
Oh, that
ignoring,
was a great answer.
the artists are not working hard enough,
Yeah.
Gerry. They have to step up their game and make it clear what are the ramifications of our technologies. And I'd say, in this world where we're constantly elevating what's called the STEM, is the science, technology, engineering, math knowledge. What we actually need is a at least an equivalent focus on our arts, because that's how we learn how to use the technologies in an ethical or sensible way. Anyone, we come up with these amazing things: the atom bomb, the space traveling vessel. But it's up to the artist to say, well, this is how it can go wrong. This is how we can actually live with it in such a way that you know we're not totally screwing over or literally ending humanity. Right.
You really get it, and you're my hero, Sasha. Thanks for summarizing that so well. But you brought up the word ethics. Bottom line, is ethics innate or invented?
Yeah, ethics, I would say, is mostly invented. I think we are. I think we are, as humans, we live in mostly a fictional universe. Everything that we really believe is something that has been either told to us or summarized to us. I mean, even looking at a tree, there's this philosopher named Bishop Berkeley. When he said, when we look at a tree, we're not really seeing the tree. If we really see the tree, we have to see every atom, every cell, every leaf. When we see it, we just dismiss it as, oh, that's a tree, and we equate it with something we've seen in a picture book, more or less, when we were 5 years old or something like that. So ethics, in a similar way, it's just this. It's our best fictional, idealistic way of dealing with each other, and that's why I really shy away from these ideas of, like, the natural order of things, or this is how people would act with each other in the wild. It's not even real. We don't live in the wild, and everything that we've decided about how we interact is our invention.
Dude, you touched on the cover of my book, Strange Questions, because that is Bishop Berkeley's actual thought in your business, graphic arts, on the cover of my book, and it's actually a still from a film. But I want to thank you for bringing that up. Really quickly, two more invent or innate questions. Are morals innate or invented?
Okay. Yeah, this is really similar to I think the last question. I mean, I
Okay,
don't want
then
to, like,
let,
confound.
yeah, let's go on. You don't have to go on. That was good. Is fiction innate or invented?
uh, you know, uh, the substance of fiction is invented, but the impulse towards fiction, I do think, is innate,
Yeah.
because it's really saying, what the fiction that we our innate drive to create fiction is basically the drive to make sense of a world that cannot be made sense of. So we have to fictionalize it. For example, like the cat and the anthropomorphization. You know, it would literally take you your whole life to understand fully even one cat, and even then you wouldn't do it. But we invent these fictions because it's so sad to not understand. So it's a coping mechanism. And I have a quote that I really wanted to share from E.M. Forrester uh, about what's the difference between a real person and a fictional character, which is that you can never really know a real person, but a fictional character in a novel can be understood fully because they only exist as the text that describes them. And if you read every word about them, then you understand that character. But even the simplest person cannot be fully understood.
Dude, that was really good because you put it in your own words, but will you email me that quote someday? Because that is a heavy, that's there. Yeah, that's it really summarizes everything Joyce and McLuhan are talking about in a way. So we really connect in a lot of ways. So Sasha, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
I really worry about what's going to happen when basically there exists a technology which is already fast approaching with some of Elon Musk's neural net stuff, which is what's going to happen when we can digitize a person completely, and living in a body is just not even doesn't make sense anymore, and you kind of have this class of people who are immortal. They're digital entities that are just kind of running on an algorithm, and then you have a world that's basically divided between these digital entities that control all the finances, and they're just kind of paying little tidbits to real flesh and blood people who can't afford the procedure. And then you kind of have this massive inequality gap between the robot immortal class and the flesh and blood people that are just being paid to essentially do things to entertain those digital entities, like oh, go take a picture of some graffiti in a toilet so I can kind of feel like I'm still a real person, but actually I'm a 300-year-old thing. And the fact of the matter is, what we'll find out when that whole system comes crashing down is that they were never real people, but just like a very sophisticated program. And everyone who's done it has died.
Hey, that was good. But don't worry, man. But if you keep worrying, if you worry and gossip, you live longer. But as soon as humans invented spoken word, it did all the same fucking shit you're talking about. Every spoken word and printed word did all that. It's no different. Everything we invented cars and TVs. That did it. That already did all that. Okay. Basically, I know it's both, and it depends. But are humans, your observations of other humans, are they more thinking beings or more feeling beings? Are they more head or more heart?
Oh, I think everyone is pretty much 90% feeling, and the thinking comes in when we try very, very hard. But most of our decision making is emotional and irrational, and I think the whole existence of a marketing industry proves that. If economics is true and everyone's a rational actor just acting uh, according to logical systems, then there would be no need for marketing to just show up and say, "Hey, man, you need a beer, you need a chocolate-covered, candy bar to give yourself heart disease," because we know you're not rational. We know you're gonna walk away from that healthy vegetable. So, how do we make irrational decisions that make up most of our life? It's with feelings, right? We see the ad for the beer, and it's not, we don't rationally think, oh yes, this is going to make my life better. No, we want to feel that feeling of being the cool guys kicking back on a beach. We're not even near a beach, and the nearest beach is 1,000 miles away.
Hey,
And then
that was good.
all the beers taste the same.
No, that
Yeah,
was
I just
good.
want to say all the beers taste Yeah, pretty much the same, and the only thing that
Yeah.
makes a difference is the sticker on the bottle and what emotion it evokes in us.
Yeah, that's create the disease and offer the cure. McLuhan said when you drink the can of beer, you're not tasting the beer, you're tasting how the advertising slogan reveals it. You know, you're tasting you he basically said you taste the menu description, you don't taste the food. But yeah, that's you're in advertising and
That's deep.
advertising. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that's deep. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that quote.
Yeah, and advertising just comes out of symbolist poetry. So you know you're in a good business. It was spawned from it, but here's the flip of all of it: is what you said, Sasha, was are humans more feeling or being? You go, I think they're more feeling. So 90% of people say, I think they're more feeling. And my one friend always says it contrary. He goes, I feel we're more thinking. Okay. Are you more afraid of
Well,
old?
first have the
Say it again.
I just want to say first we have the feeling which is so immediate, and then we come up with thoughts to explain it. What is that feeling inside it? But the feeling is so powerful.
Oh yeah. Are you more afraid of old ideas or more afraid of new ideas?
Yeah, I'm afraid of old ideas more than anything. New ideas, by virtue of their novelty and their fluidity, allow us to grapple with them, to dismiss them, to adjust them. But old ideas, they come in as these heavy weights that we just have to kind of either pick up or avoid. And sometimes they're so huge that there's almost no way to avoid them, and we have to battle with them head on, no matter how bad or corrupt they are. So yeah, old ideas are where the real threats to our society
Yeah.
are is.
Yep. And can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
So I love that you use the word conjure because I'm actually wearing the my language alchemist outfit, and this is my tool of conjuring, which is a wand with a pen nib at the tip of it. So let's do it. Let's conjure. Okay, so the one of, and it's hard to speak to the provenance of it, but I was living in the Soviet Union at the time. That's where I was born, and I was in preschool, and I look outside of the chain link fence of the children's kind of prison yard, and I see two homeless men, one asleep underneath a bench, and the other homeless man gets up and pees on his friend, who's asleep, and then the guy wakes up, and they kind of have this very cartoonish, cat chasing mouse thing, and I think that's been a very formative memory.
That is a great memory, and it evokes Samuel Beckett. Also,
I got into this whole writing.
yeah, also Chuck Berry, the greatest Finneganese rock lyricist of all time, who liked to have women pee on him. It's called the Golden Shower. Yikes. Okay. And believe me, I think anybody who invents the word motivating. So this is you're in a car motivate and you're motivating and motivating. That's pure Finneganese Chuck Berry at its best, blending the word motor and motive. Okay, no diss on Chuck. We love him. Okay, and so is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Memory is definitely a blessing. It's kind of how we figure out where we are in time and space, based on our personal history. But that being said, I think the muscle that lets go of things is a very important one to exercise.
Yes, the muscle. That's good. Of letting go. Okay, so can you tell me an early role model, someone who had an impact on you, and what was that impact within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family? Just specifically what that impact is, and just briefly.
Yeah, my big brother is 8 years older than I am, and he is my greatest critic of all time. And I am so grateful to him for that because I would still be writing complete nonsense if it wasn't for him and saying that basically everything I've ever written is complete shit. And he's really pushed me to strive really, really hard.
How cool. What's his name?
His name is Lenny.
What's his career?
He is a frustrated business analyst, which means that he doesn't even know what his job is, but it involves spreadsheets and being really pissed off all the time. And I think he wanted to be an artist, but just kind of followed the path that our immigrant parents really wanted for him. And as a result, he holds me to a higher standard so that I can do it for both of us.
That
And
is
that, actually reminds me of a Frank Zappa quote that I'll screw up, but he basically says, Frank Zappa says, if you got to where you are by listen, and you're upset because you listen to your parents, your rabbi, your priest, your community leader or whatever, like you deserve everything you get. Um, and I love that quote because I haven't listened to any of those people.
well. Thank God that Lenny is pissed off and not pissing on you. Or
So
maybe his criticism is a form of pissing on you, like your early.
it
Okay,
is.
that was good. Okay, so Sasha, outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
We have this family friend uh, who escaped the Soviet Union by building a sailboat, hiding it in a kind of a warehouse, and then in the middle of the night, sailing it down the river to Germany and then across the Atlantic to America, where he landed in Florida, basically abandoned the boat and took an American wife and has lived his whole life here ever since. Great kind of illegal immigration. And I think just knowing that story has really made me believe that you can do anything you want if you're pretty upset about the state
That
of
was
things.
great. That was great, Sasha. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
So we are what I would call like fake practicing Jews. We basically had to pretend to be pretty Jewish to be granted refugee status to emigrate to the United States, and we had to pretend like we really like to celebrate the Sabbath, and our Yom Kippur is being stifled by the evil Soviet regime. But in reality, we actually don't know how to practice any of those things. And at our dinner table, on our ersatz Hanukkah or our, slapdash Passover will be all Russian food, including like pork fat and all those great non-kosher things. So,
So you're
post-Soviet Jewry is what, yeah, that's the religion.
oh post Soviet jewelry. That's good. And so are you? You're not. You're. I would say you're not even cultural Jewish.
Oh no, no, because we don't
Yeah.
have the culture. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you something else. Something that one of my friends in high school said. which at the time sounded like a heresy, but now I agree with him. He said, "Yo, I'm so grateful to the Soviet Union that it basically outlawed religion and saved, my family from generations of bondage into, being controlled by essentially bearded rabbis and a 5,000-year-old text that hasn't been updated in 5,000 years." If it wasn't for the Soviet Union, I mean, we'd still be living like a fiddler on the roof lifestyle.
Really well
I
put.
wouldn't be here talking to you, Gerry.
Thank God for Russia. Oh, okay. So, and so, do you pray?
Yes, but I pray with the tools of my own significance. For example, Jews, they'll pray with a leather box on their forehead in which there is a scroll, and this is the antenna that connects them to God. To me, I don't think that device works. My software is not compatible with it, so I've invented my own devices like this magic wand, with which I connect to the infinite and inscribe my wishes on the heavens. And that works for me. And inside of it, there is a whisker from my recently deceased cat, the Duchess, and she helps me out in my journey.
That was well put. And so, is magic? Oh, wait. Before we go into that, if God does exist,
Yeah.
what do you want God to tell you after you die?
Well, I think whatever we call God definitely exists. Whether you call it the intelligence of the whole universe, or you call it, the order of all things that we don't understand yet. But after I die, if that entity is able to communicate to me, I'd really want to know, where the hell are the aliens, man?
That is good. Okay. What is magic? Because this your first answer was blew me out completely. What's the best thing for human being magic? Is magic innate or invented?
Yeah, magic is invented using innate techniques. We have all of these incredibly powerful abilities to connect with things outside of ourselves. I think, whether you want to be scientific about it, we or more spiritual, we have, these energy fields within us. They project energy. We can rub other people's energy fields. We can alter our realities. But magic is sort of the discipline by which we study and understand those innate abilities. So, for example, I think we all have the ability to sort of foresee the future in some way, at least, at the very least, in our dreams. But that's just this innate kind of thing. It's kind of like a muscle, and magic is the way that we train that muscle, and we say, okay, let's interpret these random images that I saw last night and create an actually useful like prophecy out of that. And so magic is that discipline of making sense of the innate chaos inside of ourselves.
Yeah, that was good. It sort of summarized what McLuhan said about Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. We're dreaming awake, that everybody dreams when they're asleep. They all create these amazing scenarios, but artists also dream while they're awake, dreaming awake. So, okay, so Sasha, do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Damn, heavy, heavy, heavy stuff. Uh, I do think that Yeah, I think it's closer to the vehicle answer. Evil does, and what I mean by evil is that there does seem to be this sort of, if you look at the world, it's kind of like a chemical reaction or osmosis. If you have a glass of water and you put like a membrane through it, and you put salt on one end, the salt just wants to fill the other side there to create a balance. So I think, whatever we call evil, it's this like balance. If everybody's doing whatever is called good, there's naturally going to be a vacuum for some people to say, well, what's the opposite of that? I don't want to join this goody movement. I'm going to go over to whatever is the other side. And I don't know if it's like evil as an intelligent entity saying, like literally pulling people over, but it is kind of more closer to like a law of physics. What is entropy? uh, there's always going to be this movement of counter, and 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 then on both sides you'll have, on both sides, the people who are evil actually think they're good and that the other side is evil.
Right. That's perfect. You have ESP. We call it cloned ESP. You had anticipated the next question. In this, I'm going to bring up a few modern thinkers. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? So, first of all, Alan Watts said, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. Uh, Fellini says, I need an enemy. And Chinese proverb, he who cannot agree with their enemy is controlled by them. So that's a lot of thoughts. The question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But before you answer, how would you specifically react to the Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Oh, I think that's not to be dismissive, but I think that's kind of total BS. If you don't acknowledge your enemy, you're just gonna get stabbed in the face, not even the back. And to answer the question, I really want to mention a movie I recently watched, which is Shakespeare in Love. I was blown away by its depth and complexity. But one of the moments that was the greatest tragedy in Shakespeare's life in that film is when his greatest rival, Christopher Marlowe, was killed in a drunken bar brawl. And he said, I did all my best work by looking at him and trying to overcome him. So, if you're not constantly studying your enemy, or if you're, God forbid, your enemy disappears, you're lost.
That's really good because you had evoked American Indians say your enemy is your best teacher.
Oh yeah.
But how do you deal with an enemy? Or no, how would you advise someone to deal with an enemy?
I would advise them to begin writing a grand book about their enemy.
That is a great answer. Not just a book, a grand book.
Oh yeah, because your enemy will be the most memorable villain of the age if you really paint them properly.
Yeah. Okay. What first attracted you to pursue writing and then graphic design? So we'll take the two. Let's take one. You can tell us your through line, but at what point you grew up reading because your parents were reading, or you picked up reading on your own, and then what did you read and go, oh, I can do that? So just tell us the through line on that.
Okay, and before I jump in, I just want to make one quick comment on our previous question. Is that the word Satan in the Bible doesn't mean devil or demon or whore. It actually means the adversary, which is it goes back to that question of evil. It's just the people or the entity on the opposite side. It's the one challenging and pushing you. So that's just my little tidbit before we close that chapter.
No,
So,
no.
yeah.
let
to
me add.
writing.
This is that. Let me add this to what you just said because it's really important. McLuhan called the last page of Finnegan's Wake the Black Mass. And people go, ooh, Black Mass, that's Satan worship. And it's like, no, Anton LaVey, one of the greatest, no, not great, but he's a guy who followed Satan in America, said that the Black Mass is a parody of the Catholic Mass. So,
Uh-huh.
you saying there's more to words, words evoke more than their meaning. So Satan means a lot more than what everybody thinks it means. And you saying it means adversary, it means opposite, it means filling out a bigger picture view. So that you really enlightened me there. Satan in the Bible means adversary. Thank you for that.
Okay, so let's talk about the writing question, yeah? So, and this is kind of me rewriting my own story or coming to terms with the story, but my family and I moved to this country with basically two checked pieces of luggage each person. I mean, and in that you have to move your whole life. And one of the things my parents chose to use about two pieces of checked luggage on was transporting our whole library of, mostly Russian and translated classics to America. So, there is this great literary inheritance I received, which I didn't use until my later years. But my whole life I was pretty much expected to study science and math and become a banker or a doctor or a lawyer. And I actually did become a banker for a brief period of time until I was sent to a sort of, and what at the time seemed so horrible, I was sent to Buffalo, New York for a winter working at the bank there. Uh, and at the time, it seemed really like a punishment, but actually, it turned out to be a great gift in the sense that there's a great tradition of Russian writers being sent into a wintry exile where they create their great work. And in this wintry exile, I basically started reading books again. Uh, and one of the things that I read was Moby Dick, strictly on my toilet breaks over the course of 6 months. And the granted, toilet breaks started to stretch into an hour or two long, which gives you an idea how dedicated I was to my work. But after I read Moby Dick, I thought this is amazing, and I really want to engage more with literature. And I also need to escape from the bank, and so I looked at all of my options. I really didn't study anything in particular in my undergraduate years, so I didn't have any kind of tangible skills to pursue. But I thought, well, when you're really stuck at the end of your rope, you have to start just inventing stuff. And I started writing short stories about how much I hated the bank, and then that became actually a slightly subversive satirical newsletter that I began distributing to my coworkers about how much they should hate the bank, and I started to amass I amassed a following of coworkers until one of them kind of reported me to HR, and I was on the verge of getting fired when this woman, a vice president, she said, "Well, I'm actually starting a communications department, and this guy has reach." And so instead of getting fired, I got a promotion. I became a vice president of communications, the bank, and I worked there for another couple of years in this absurd role, writing silly nonsense. And at some point, I was like, well, I'm doing this professionally. I might as well train myself to the highest level. And I applied to Masters of Fine Arts programs in creative writing, and I was accepted to Columbia University. And I basically got to sit in a classroom and breathe the same air, and in fact, stand at the urinal next to some of my great writing influences, which were Gary Steingart and Paul Beatty, uh, my God, I mean, that was like unbelievable. I mean, can you imagine peeing next to a Booker Prize winner? You know, it's like, and glancing over to try to look at their penis. You know, it's like, you're like, all right, this is a real person. They need to, you know, they have the same bodily functions I do. So obviously, if I just read what they read and kind of practice their lifestyle, I can achieve at least something like they can. Um,
What was the name of the
that's kind of
newsletter?
my.
That was beautifully well put. What was the name of the newsletter?
Oh, it's my last name, which is Grabovsky. It was called the Grabovsky Report, kind of modeled on the Borowitz Report in the New Yorker. And, you
Yeah.
know, the stories would be something like, oh, guy comes to a meeting, but he studied all the wrong acronyms, and he always says he's kind of jumping in with this thing, committing these endless faux pas, and then he kind of has a breakdown. Uh, you know,
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
you know,
Next question.
very,
Sasha,
yeah.
that was really, really well put. Next question is, a screenwriting teacher told me a great film is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Stanley Kubrick said a great film or a great book, great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
So I think as a younger writer or a less mature writer, I was very concerned with intention. I really wanted the audience to understand how deep and profound I was and how hard I had worked to give them this text. And what it made for is extremely dry, over philosophical text that lacked, you know, the colorful scenarios and sort of creative flourishes that actually make a work of art engaging and great. And I think that the intention of the artist should be almost invisible. And to quote one of my great teachers, Lara Vapniar, she said something along the lines of, what you want to do in a piece of writing is make the reader feel very, very smart, even though you know in your heart they're not. And I think that's how my creative process works now. Is, you know, the the reader should almost feel like they've stolen a bit of intent, or they've interpreted the piece of art in a way that you never even intended, because you're so dumb, you silly writer. But they have figured it out, and it's actually that pleasure of figuring it out is why we consume art and books and movies and all that. It's to say, forget the guy, he doesn't know anything, but this is what I got. And if that happens to be what you actually wanted them to get, well, then that's a masterpiece.
Sasha, you nailed my philosophy is great art should do two things: fuck your shit up and make you go, I could do that. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, and then the other thing is, Mike, you ever listen to Michael Silverblatt's radio show called Bookworm? You've got to listen to this.
No, I.
Oh, you've got to listen to it. He interviews every great writer ever in the last 30 years, and he tells them what their book's about, and they go, "That was really good." He takes it farther than they could, because he said this horrible thing. Well, it could be horrible. He says, "Reading is better than life." I like to read more than I like to live. Like, get a life, dude. Okay, so that
I
was
can.
really. Go ahead.
No, I can completely understand that, but I want to say, the book, it's just a match. It's a match that sets ablaze a forest fire in your mind. You can't give the match credit for everything that happens, but it's a catalyst, and that's what it should be. It's something that pushes someone to then create a whole worldview or set of experiences in their own life. It can't do it for you.
Yeah, there's a couple things about that fire thing. McLuhan said, I'm not starting the fire, I'm just turning on the alarm. In Greta, Greta says that most people look at the alarm and not the fire. They're like, oh my God, they hear alarm and they don't really look at the fire. So the book is really a match
Yeah.
that starts the fire. Those three things right there are a good trilogy. Okay, we're moving on to James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin over 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said that the best fiction can be more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Yes, I think that life, whatever we call it with the capital L, it's so complex, it's so full of stimuli that we can't really analyze its constituent parts because there's so much more to experience. For example, we say, I'll go outside and look at a real tree, but you have to go out there, you have to remember to bring a jacket, and you have to remember to bring a hat. And as soon as you get there to look at the tree, now your tummy's rumbling or you need to pee. And there's all of these outside things to deal with. But in the movie theater, everything is stripped away and we can actually look at the tree. And I think with art, it's the same way. I've actually seen in Chelsea, New York City's art gallery district. I remember I saw behind a glass window a homeless man's shopping cart. And at first I thought, oh, well, this gallery has been abandoned and someone has moved in, a squatter. But then I saw next to the shopping cart a little artist statement. And I was like, this is so dumb. Why would they put this here? But the problem is when you see a shopping cart on the street, you're already afraid of the man who it belongs to. You're afraid of standing there. It smells like urine. uh, there's people jostling you along. And how can you really study that object until it's isolated, until it's presented like almost a scientific exhibit, and you can actually begin to take a look at it as itself? Same thing with if there was like a feather on display in an art gallery, you could actually look at it. If the feather's on the bird's flying around, you're chasing it, you're stumbling, you've got brambles in your hair, you can't really experience it. So that's why we need the art to simplify and
Yep.
isolate.
Simplify and isolate. That's good because your example was happened. Some artists had a bunch of garbage as their art. And the cleaning lady at the cleaning person at the art museum threw it all out. By mistake, they threw the whole art piece out. They go, that was the art. Okay.
Well,
So
that reminds me. That reminds me of the man who peed into Duchamp's urinal, and that was his own performance art.
we have a major thing of peeing in this interview. I like that. Duchamp peed in his urinal. Boy,
I'm sorry.
Marcel probably loved that. It probably made him cream his jeans.
Well, I have to say I have another little philosophical tidbit, which is, people will sit there and they'll philosophize about what's the meaning of life, and and the conclusion to every philosophical argument is I have to get up and use the bathroom, or I have to get up and eat, or I'll die. People say, oh, do we exist? Do we not exist? But at some point, yes, my physical needs exist, and that is the final proof.
Yeah, that's again, go to Frank Zappa, whose the new documentary on Frank opens today. online, and he has a great song. It goes like this, and it was just one of his crew members said the line, and he turned it into a song. Why does it hurt when I pee? And so that was very, very good. Okay, so McLuhan said that everything we invent extends some humanness. So clothing is an extension of skin. Knife and fork extends our teeth. The shutter, projector, and a camera extends our eyelid. What does the writing utensil extend for you? Whether it's a pencil or a keyboard, what humanness does it extend?
Oh yeah, so it extends the sense of thought. I had this question the other day. Is we always say we have five senses, yeah, uh, taste, touch, the others. But what about when we're not actively engaged with those five senses? Are we always using them, or do we use something else? And I think we at least have one more sense, which is the sense of our interior mind, the sense of thought, whatever that is. It's very complex, but writing is a sort of a photograph of the mind in moments. Because it's so easy to forget. I'm sure you've heard this quote that the palest ink is better than the sharpest memory. How do we crystallize what's going on in our mind? It's only with writing or with recorded speech, or painting or something like that. But it's that extension of our interior world.
Well, that's perfect to lead to the T.S. Eliot said that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
My inner dialogue is in about five different voices. Two of them are Russian. One of them is a little boy. One of them is a grouchy old man with a busted cigar in his mouth, just barking commands. One of them is just this voice that uses pretty much language like a blunt axe, where it's just like random words with no articles to string them together. Uh, yeah, and one of those is this kind of gentleman in his smoking jacket at the club, in one of those Chippendale chairs, kind of expounding on things. It's yeah, I have a gallery of inner voices.
That was good, man, because the old grouchy man is an altakaka. You know what? You know, that's an old Jewish guy who sits and complains, an
Yeah,
altakaka. And then
yeah.
the language like a blunt axe, that was amazing. And so um, Michael Apted is a movie director, and I asked him a question 35 years ago. Why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? So this was right when MTV came in, and there was flat flicker frame editing prevalent. Even though Abel Gance invented it in 1922 in France, it really became extreme with MTV. Marty Scorsese said he cut his films faster because of MTV. So Michael Apted said, I says, why do they feel so obliged to edit fast? He said, because we've learned to take in information faster. My question is asked with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we brainwashed to believe we can?
You know, yes, we can take in information faster, and I will say that the proof of that is if you basically meet someone who is from and has grown up in, say, China or Korea, and you ask them to take out their cell phone, you'll see it's about the size of, like a large notebook. And you'll notice that it's pretty much got 50 apps open at once. There's like 5 notifications every second, and they're completely navigating it easily. And I think that that's amazing, and that's a kind of a next level of information processing that in this society we're not even up to that yet, and it's already a thing. That being said, in my own life, I don't believe in multitasking. I feel like I have to focus on one task at a time. But then again, it's just, maybe I'm just processing more facets of that task rather than a few facets of a couple of different tasks. But that being, again, another caveat is that you can always get a little bit better at it the more you train yourself to do it. And it, it's the same way with reading books. At first, if you haven't read a book in a couple of months or a year, it's kind of hard to even engage with the simplest tasks. And then as you sort of work your way up to the Everest books, you're able to actually handle them.
Well put, Sasha. Marcel Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. What role does the audience play when you're writing your book? How much are you thinking of them?
Well, a couple of months ago, I actually wrote a note to myself, which is that right now my readership is pretty much close to zero. I mean, it's not. I have a couple, maybe 100 people in the world have read most of my works, which are not that many yet. And I'm really grateful for that, for this period, that I don't really have to worry about the audience as much. Uh, this is a rare period in every artist's life where no one's paying any attention to them. So you get to play completely freely without that pressure of, oh, what do they expect, or what have I already made that they're going to be looking for. Yeah. So, and I think after a period of success, an artist inevitably wants to return to that period. Say, oh, fuck the audience. I want to go back to when I could play. So I'm kind of aware of my own playful stage right now. That's largely unencumbered by an audience.
Yeah, that's an important word. You get it. We're all about play here. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Well, a compromise seems like such a dirty word. It implies that even before you do something, you're already diluting it, and addiction is that strong drink. So I think conviction is what gets you to go all the way, as Charles Bukowski said. He didn't say conviction, but he said go all the way, which is can only be done if you have an almost a lunatic conviction in the process. And if you're compromising, then you've already predetermined that you'll never make it all the way. So I'd say 100% conviction, and then if you have to, compromise.
Nice. And is ambition based more on fear or joy?
I wish it were based on purely joy, but I think it's based on fear, starting with the most basic fear of hunger and homelessness, and going all the way to fear that your rival will outdo you, or an imaginary rival, or even what you imagine to be your best self never coming into reality, and the fear of that, the fear of dying before you really reach that imagined self that you can be, and the joy is what comes out of those ambitions being realized, perhaps.
Well put. In one filmmaker's mantra is ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas, experimental filmmaker, also said, there is no self-expression. Jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making, writing, more self-expression or more vehicles for whatever dominant culture or technology is present? I know it's both, but which one do you think it's more?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm heavily on the side of the not self-expression. I think self-expression is relatively limited. I mean, unless you've had a billion life experiences that can eclipse the expression of previous generations, which is pretty much impossible. I mean, like, how many of us are going to go fight the Trojans? You know, like, so I think what art and this is my more kind of mature post art school understanding is that basically, you know, well, let's just stick to literature, but I think it applies to all art forms. You know, it's our job to engage with the texts that came before us and to create some sort of deviation from them. So, you know, for example, literature is just made out of previous literature with like a little tiny drop of self-expression to wet it and get it going again. But most of the time, the only way to make a sensible, coherent piece of art is to engage with all the art that has come before you, and that's our job as artists, is to, you know, take what is familiar and make it just ever so slightly unfamiliar. But if we're just self-expressing, then it's chaos.
Really well put. It evokes this essay I wrote, which is a lot about Harold Bloom's book called Anxiety of Influence.
And it's
and
exactly who I'm referring to.
yeah,
It's
and
Linneman.
yeah, it's wannabes. You know, the Coen brothers are just Preston Sturges wannabes. And if you told them that, they'd go, "Thanks for the compliment." And so, can art making be egoless? Can writing be egoless?
Uh, Absolutely not. I think the ego comes in when you say, "Well, I have read Yeats and Joyce and Foster Wallace, and I think I can transcend them." And it is that impulse that is what allows you to even begin the endeavor. Is to say, "I am dissatisfied with what has come before me, and not only am I dissatisfied, but I believe I have the tools to take them on and grind them up and drink them as a smoothie, these greats that came before me."
Yeah.
So,
Is yeah,
yeah,
that
that's,
was good. Sasha, is perception reality?
yeah. No. If perception were reality, there'd be no need to ever think, because, you know, everything you see, you just say, "Ah, that's it. That's exactly what it is." And you know, when I heard that phrase the most is when I was working at the bank, and you know, my boss would be like, "Well, you know, perception is reality. You know, when you come in with that rumpled shirt, it says that you're not really taking this job seriously." And of course, I was, you know, I could do my whole job in about 4 hours, a whole week's worth of work. So I was very competent, and yet the perception that I gave off was that I was incompetent, and that's just a lazy way to say you know, I don't really want to look at what you've done or look at who this person is. I'm just gonna uh, apply whatever, you know, my faulty perception apparatus is without any sort of digging deeper.
Why is it so difficult for humans to consider the possibility that life may be pointless?
If life is pointless, then we're just performing a series of arbitrary tasks. You know, everything we do, like make money or buy beautiful things or hug our lover or talk to our family members, is just, you know, it's just bullshit. It's just our robot kind of programming. And if that is the case, then we would just have to kill ourselves, right? Um, and that sounds hard, honestly, and that sounds like a lot of planning. And I think a lot of times it's easier to just say, well, I'd rather go back to my job every day than actually plot my own suicide, because that actually required creativity and a lot of effort and thinking outside the box, and it's easier to just go on with it. And
That's good.
going
Alan,
shopping.
yeah. Alan Watts loves to quote either Camus or Sartre, who says, the whole essence of life is whether to commit suicide or not. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, those are
Lou,
thinkers that I align with quite
yeah,
greatly.
yeah. Lewis Carroll said, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Oh yeah, I mean, even the idea of my own literary success is in a way an impossible idea. It has no proof, no basis. It's a crazy idea and a mad undertaking, and yet the only way to achieve the impossible is to wholeheartedly believe it. That's not to mention the whole idea that this silly stick has any power in it, and yet it's the guiding a compass of my life. So yeah, I'd
Yeah,
say my life is built here of possibilities.
I love it. Name one major element of your writing that stayed the same since you start, and one major element that's changed.
The major element that has stayed the same is my fascination and delight in the scatological and carnivalesque. At first I thought I was the only one doing this. Oh yeah, like no novel ever shows the main character taking a piss, or scratching his balls. And yet, once you actually start reading, you realize, oh, there's a lot of that. I mean, you see that in Joyce. There's a particularly great scene in Ulysses where Bloom is going to get some kidneys, right, for his breakfast. He just uses the outhouse quite happily. You know how he this is like whole long description of his bowel emptying, and then what became this sophomoric fascination actually entered this grand literary tradition. So I do love the scatological. I think we all need to remember that we are not just thinking beings, but peeing beings. And something that has changed is my desire to come across as really smart in my writing by using big words and big philosophical concepts, because what I kind of learned, it's not just like me figuring it out. It's my teachers constantly reiterating this point. But you really, in a book, you can't get anything across except through a dramatic situation that is quite simple. Two bodies crashing into each other. Something visual, something explosive, something very basic that stimulates us to think about the big ideas.
Sasha, well put. It it recalls this phrase that McLuhan brings up, but I'm not going to ask you about it, but think about it and we'll talk about it another time. It's called the drama of cognition. It sounds like if you invent thinking, you bet there's going to be drama. But he probably means something else. I don't know.
Yeah,
Sometime you could think about it. But here's the
but
question. Oh,
I
go
mean
ahead.
the okay.
Go ahead.
No, I want to say the drama of cognition. That phrase brings to mind one of my, it's like a book I have a love-hate relationship with, which is Clarice Lispector's The Passion According to G.H., which is this like deep philosophical meditation that occurs in the a space of an afternoon of a lady chasing a cockroach around her house, and every time she kills it, it comes back to life with its guts spilling out and crawls underneath another cupboard. It's again, you can't have deep thoughts without a very basic scenario around which they can sort of precipitate.
Yeah, that's good. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength. We're normally taught to overcome weaknesses. Tell me a weakness that you've turned into a strength.
So English is my second language, right? In fact, one of my teachers in high school, even when I thought I spoke English quite fluently, wrote on my paper, he said, I know English is your second language, but it is the language you must learn to communicate in, and gave me a C on my paper. And I was like, what the hell, yo? This is ridiculous. Like, you'd never say that to a native English speaker. You just say, this is shittily written, You wouldn't have to stab them in the back with it. And this is one of my agons, to like prove, yes, I can speak English even better than a native speaker, so much so that I can write books in it, that native English speakers will not only read, but they will create an American identity. So, and it is actually a strength because I really learned to kind of be bilingual in my writing, to use Russian phrases that I translate and highlight the absurdity of that language. And something else that I've also used my Russian skills for is something I learned from a Haruki Murakami essay about how he got his first book published, which is that he would write in Japanese and it was very stilted and full of cliches, and nobody wanted to publish him. So he wrote a book about starting with baseball in English, which was his second language, and he really had to use simple words because he didn't know complicated ones, and he had to focus on these evocative, amazing scenes, visual. He had to focus on the scenes and the objects and the situations rather than this flowery inherited language. And so sometimes I'll even write in Russian, which I is actually I speak worse Russian than I do English, and so I am forced to simplify and focus on like what's the real heart of the deal, and then translate my own Russian into English.
Yeah, that's heavy. I speak worse Russian than English. That's funny. I mean, it's good, because
Well,
you speak with a Russian accent, but you know English better, and that's totally understandable because you were mainly raised in America.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But I do retain that, and one of the stones is Nabokov, who will basically use a lot of funny Russian phrases translated into English, and then what becomes like a really what would be otherwise a boring description is extra exciting because it's like he creates the illusion of being a Russian speaker using English words. Like he calls armpits mouse pits, which is like the direct translation of the Russian.
that's funny. And that's Nabokov, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. Thank you. That's why Joyce totally ruined the novel by writing Finnegan's Wake with over 60 languages in one book. So you can't really translate it to any language, although it became a bestseller in China about 3 years ago. And they thought they could literally
Really?
they thought they could translate it. How could you translate 60 languages into one language? Well, you can, but so can you go another 10 or 20 minutes?
Let's do it.
Okay. Anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
Anger can be a productive emotion when you're really, really pissed off.
What's the most significant difference between women and men, physical aside?
This is where I can get in trouble if I don't navigate this quite diplomatically. I'll be straight up. I believe that women are probably like twice as evolved as men because they have that chromosome that has, I think, like 10 times the amount of genetic information on it than men. What is it, like two X chromosomes, and is what women have, and each X chromosome is like full of information, but men have the X and the Y is just like pathetic. So women like literally carry the algorithm of the human race on in their bodies. I know you said physically aside, but I think that translates into like a whole total feeling of responsibility for all of humanity. While men on a genetic level, they really are only programmed to think about themselves and the old pee.
You create
And
what
I'm
you
not saying we can't overcome.
Yeah, yeah. That's fine. Now, there's a saying that goes, you create what you resist. Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into, you are what you hate. James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion which you say you disbelieve. But Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. So, how do you react to this? How do you react to this line? I'm not asking you to agree or disagree with it, but just what's your thoughts on this line? You create what you resist. Not you, Sasha, but just in general. One creates what one resists.
I remember, I think I overheard someone talking on the phone in the subway, and they said this line. They said the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. Because actually, like what you said, when you hate something, you're actually obsessed with it. You can't stop thinking about it. It's a sort of, it's the count. It's like love, but for a different end. And I think that goes also along with our discussion of Northrop. Sorry, not Northrop. Harold Bloom's anxiety of influence, which is you basically what pushes you to transcend your the great writers or the great artists who came before you, is that you kind of you hate what they've written because it doesn't fully capture what the truth is. So you have to, even as much as you're inspired by them, you hate them for how limited they were.
Yeah.
And then you focus on where they failed and you want to overcome.
Yeah. Were you gonna say Northrop Frye by mistake?
Yeah, with the anatomy of criticism, but it's a
Yeah.
that's a different set of ideas.
Because
But
he was the opposite of McLuhan in a way, so that was fun. They were like polar opposites who sort of fought each other, but not really. There was a lot of crossover. They're just smart thinkers at the same time. So, is hate culturally learned or is it in humans innately? Hating, the act of hating.
I mean, like the act of hating, it's. I think it is natural. I don't think it's as culturally learned because I think love is natural, and if we're gonna take what I said before as a starting premise that hate is the opposite of love, it's just a different direction of it. If we love naturally, then we hate naturally.
Yeah.
And just even as a background on which to love, we have to have a little bit of hate.
How do you find?
And
Go.
that being said, I think to make like you said, McLuhan and Fry, they were these great, rivals and opposites, always working from each other. I mean, that is what makes a literary movement or artistic movement kind of become epic and part of the national or the global conversation, and then end up in history. Like Faulkner's great burns on Hemingway, right? Like Hemingway making fun of Faulkner for his incomprehensible words, and then Faulkner calling all of Hemingway's work as field and stream stories. It's that kind of out of that antagonism actually is something that the society wants to look at. A grudge match, a rivalry, and I think what we're missing a little bit today is we don't have enough like cheesy sensational drama between writers where they're like spitting at each other or throwing a glass of water in each other's, because that's what would make people actually read the books. Like, oh, what made this one guy throw his water glass at the other? Like, what could be in that book that's so bad? Now all you have is these positive reviews, and everyone's like, "This is the greatest book of the epoch," and this is the prose is vivid, and the ending is poignant, and it's all a tale of redemption. And it's like, let's get some freaking, and doesn't have to be real, right? They could be best friends in the background, but in the public sphere there has to be a performance. Like celebrity gossip, why is it so exciting, right? They're always, oh, she gave her a bad eye at the gala awards. Now you want to watch both of their movies.
Yeah, it's really well put, because it's back to that cheesy good housekeeping advice I gave you early. If you gossip and you complain, you live longer. And so Sam Goodwin nailed what you just said. He says, as for the critics, don't even ignore them. Okay, so
I mean, I just want to say, I mean, about that, I don't know if you remember, but there was a book called City of Fire by a writer named Garth Risk Halberg that came out about 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe, yeah, maybe two or three. And basically, all the critics said it was the worst written book of all time. And guess what? I had to buy it because I had to read it. It's really the worst. And I skipped over all the books that were the greatest book of all time because that was exciting. Something bad, finally.
Yeah, that's well put. Can you forget to die?
I have a scene in a novel I'm working on right now that deals with that issue, which involves basically a really old cat who is looking for a place to die. I don't know if you know this, but cats kind of always look for a quiet, dark place to die. And I mean, a lot of animals do. And this particular cat is living in a communal apartment in the Soviet Union where there's like five families sharing a three-bedroom. And basically, the cat can never get a private space to die, so it just kind of lives forever. Because every time it tries to fall asleep and die, someone slams a pot, or drops a fork, or the water heater explodes, and it just can't find the place to die. So, yes.
That's good. It reminds me of Dustin Hoffman in Midnight Cowboy. He goes, "I'm walking here." He said, you could translate it to, "I'm dying here." You can't die here. Okay. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Yeah, last summer actually, before I was biking past the apartment building where I grew up in, and I don't often pass by there. So as I was biking, I kind of looked at myself. I looked like this cool hipster guy in like a tank top and short shorts, and I had a nice mustache. And I was going to art school for creative writing, which I could not even have imagined doing when I was a kid living in that apartment building. And I thought, hey, if that kid came out, if I came out and saw me roll by, I think, hey, that guy's pretty cool. And to be honest, if I messed up any one of the steps in between, I would not be where I am today. So I'd probably I'd probably not come up to that kid because I wouldn't want to screw anything up. Maybe I'd like follow him around and write some of the stuff he said so I could make a more authentic autobiography later.
That was good.
Maybe I'd pee on him.
Maybe that is
Hey,
well. That
kid.
goes good. Again, you have cloned ESP because you anticipate the next question. What way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
I think you just skip the toilet paper, wipe with your hand, and a little like spout bucket in the back, the way they do in India and in Iran.
I've had that answer like once in 30 years, so that's pretty good. Rarity. Okay, if a publisher was
Keep
to
it in.
say it again.
Keep it in the roll. I'll tell you something that they. So I was in ROTC for a year. It's not really the U.S. Army, but there is a little trick that the older guys in the Army play on the younger guys, which is they take a piece of toilet paper and say, you know how you wipe your butt in the field? And they take out this square and they cut out the middle part. So it's just your fingers poking through the hole. And they tell you this is how you do it. I'm sure
That's
people
good. Toilet paper with hole in the roll. I like that. Okay, so you must have ESP because you anticipated this. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Masturbations in an emergency.
They want Sasha, they go, we want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell would it be?
It's oh man, there's so many great smells. Oh man, oh, where you really caught me off guard. This the smell would be like a movie theater that just emptied out with a little bit of popcorn and throw up smell, and
Yeah.
then still the static cracking of the screen.
I like that. The next question is similar. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
It should be made out of wax with a little candle on top, and it should be displayed in. Uh, it should be displayed in a men's bathroom somewhere in a nondescript office building in Manhattan, and people should light the candle on top whenever there's been a particularly foul defecation, so that it can clear the air in the room.
That is an excellent answer. I'll get on that right away. I'm going to make that for you. I'm going to make that a reality before you become rich and famous. You get on a New York bestsellers list. We got to have that happen. Okay, Sasha, just a couple more. Please tell me something good you never had and you never want.
This is a funny interpretation of good, but it's a parent's divorce. For a lot of my high school and college years, I really envied the kids whose parents divorced because it gave them permission to be these gloomy, dark, artistic creators who could constantly write an infinite number of songs and books about how much they hate their parents. And all I wanted was some sort of family catastrophe to give me something to write about. But I don't think I want that anymore.
Yeah, but that is a great answer because people wouldn't say it's good, but you put it in the context. In most the cliche I love is that I learned is if your parents separate before you turn 18, you're fucked. So it's like most kids, I go, when did your parents separate? And they'll go 8, 5, 10. And yesterday the guy says 18. I goes, man, you just squeezed by. You're not fucked.
Yeah, but
Okay.
you go to art school writing class, and every story is about the parents' divorce, and they don't even have to
Right.
work hard to come up with a good situation.
No, I totally understand what you're saying. Okay, if you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Once the bag of shit would land on my face, I would clear the mouth hole and say, "Well, now I'm in over my head."
And Joseph Boys, you know, this artist, he said, make the secrets productive. And Lou Welsh, a great beat poet, you should study both of these guys, are amazing. He said, guard the secrets, constantly reveal them. But it was Thornton Wilder. He said in 1928, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. Sasha, you've laid your cards out on the table for 90 minutes. You've told me a lot and you've been very articulate. What's it really all about for you?
I mean, honestly, it's the same impulse that megalomaniacs and tyrants are driven by, which is basically to tell people what to do using your own life story as a basis. And what I want to do is create art that tells people how to live like a healthy, loving life that involves all the screwed up stuff. And about the secrets, I do want to say that. Um, if you're revealing too many secrets and you're too close to them, if you're too close to that pain that you're writing about, it can't be interesting because you'll be too wrapped up in it, and you need ironic distance to truly reveal a secret. And actually, once you do gain that ironic distance, it doesn't even feel like a personal secret anymore. It feels like a story you're telling about someone else. So gaining ironic distance from the traumas of my own life, whatever they may be, is the way that I can create art that tells people what to do.
I love that because it is, you've really gotten deeper. You just didn't say to express yourself or blah, blah. You tell people what to do. And this goes back to an earlier question, which I've always been shocked how people answer. I says, can art making be egoless? And rarely do people say anything but no, there's always ego involved. And one time someone said, great art is egoless. And the way I interpreted that was that when you make art that reaches a lot of people and it's universal, it's because the ego is not present. But it's so deep because you can't separate them. It's just like saying, are people more feeling or thinking beings? Because we invented the words, we can say they're more feeling or more thinking. You can't separate that. That's one in the same. The body and the mind are so interconnected, you can't really separate them. But because we invented words, we think we can separate them. It's the
Well, it's
disservices of
always a question of Yeah.
Say it again. It's always a question of.
It's a question of what is primary, you know. I mean, of course it's together all the time, but it's what really comes to the forefront. And you know, Gerry, I want to say one more thing, you know, while I still have a something going on. I mean, in terms of what's it all about, one of my best friends from writing school, I call him the saint of American letters. um, he said the problem with our society is that the thinkers and the artists are silent compared to, you know, like the clowns and the sensationalists, you know. I mean, my job is really to try to get the deep ideas out there, because there's so many loud people who are completely lacking any depth, you know, and they're controlling most of the conversation. And it's really,
Yeah.
it's incumbent upon the philosophers and the thinkers and you know, to really get a little louder and get the message out there and be like, don't listen to, you know, this clown politician or this whatever, you know, like superficial person who's just telling you that it's all about your makeup, you know, like that's boring, you know. Like, you know, I don't want to get political, but you know, like in an ideal world, everything that Donald Trump does would be boring compared to like the quality of the art and thinking that we actually want to hear from the, you know, the great minds of the day.
Yeah, no, you nailed it well, because McLuhan said the word makes the market. It doesn't matter what any president does, it's what they say and it makes the market. And then Marshall said an amazing thing. He said, word is the most addicting and universal drug. We're all addicted to word. So we're processing life through words and not through instrumental music, though we can hear instrumental music. And in my friend who studied with McLuhan, she said splitteracy, that once we invented printed word, it split our brain and we separated the inner from the outer. So, you know, it's the key is how do we flip this, you know, like it's an honor to reiterate Zappa's movies coming out today, because everybody is going to review it and go, that was great. They're not going to look at the movie as a movie. They're looking at the content of the movie. And they're not saying, what did this movie do to me as a movie? That's the form, because they're all, you know, it already happened. Another Zappa documentary came out a few years ago and it had a few problems, but nobody mentioned it because every film critic was white, my age, 60 years old, and they were going, Zappa's the man. He never kissed up to the man, and he's integral. And yeah, the movie was okay. You know, they know that the form and the content aren't what people go for. They only go for the content. In fact, T.S. Eliot, back to the poetry, says that's the watchdog of your mind. When you're stealing from your neighbor, when the criminal is robbing a house, all he does is bring a piece of steak, big hunk of meat. And when the guard dog comes out, he just gives it to the guard dog, and the guard dog runs off and he can commit his crime. And that's what, you know, form is, or content is that piece of meat. That's what McLuhan said, and T.S. Eliot taught McLuhan. We all go for the content. We don't understand the big picture form. But you really brought up a lot of things for me to think about, and it's been an honor and a pleasure. I just have two more questions, and I hope our dialogue can
Let's do it.
yeah, I hope our dialogue can continue on forever. It's really been an honor and a pleasure, and I sure learned a lot.
Oh, for me. Oh.
So, what is the healthiest cultural shift you see developing today?
I mean, I think this is a generational shift that happens pretty much in every era, but it is the shift of basically a new group of people coming in to create reality based on their own cultural references. You know, I think about this book that came out probably 5 or 6 years ago called Ready Player One. I don't know if you read it, but like one of the I mean, it's a sci-fi book, but one of the concepts in it is that basically this billionaire releases this competition for young people to basically get really good at 80s trivia. You know, like who designed this 80s video game, or who was the secondary guitarist on this like 80s song. And you know, I thought that book really explained, you know, what the issue is in our in this particular world, which is that, you know, we're kind of, as young people, we're a little bit stifled by the cultural references of our you know, of our teachers, of our parents, of like all the older people who you know, were really passionate about those things, and you know, they make fun of you because you've never seen Midnight Cowboy, but it's like, oh yeah, well, guess what, you haven't seen like the latest Quentin Tarantino movie, and that is so much more important to me than, you know. Yeah, and I think that now that we actually have like a generation of young people that are like creative, are mature creatively speaking and able to create new cultural references. That's, I'm so glad that that is continuing to happen, and we, you know, because there's always the risk that we just have been so stifled that we cannot create anything new, and we're constantly referring to the greats of the past. So I'm really proud of my peers and colleagues who are doing it, and I hope to be one of them. And
Yeah,
it's a necessary thing, but it doesn't happen by itself. There are
it's
people who
real,
have to
really,
come out and do it.
yeah, really well put. Because when I speak to students or just work with some of the people I work with and play with who are 18 to 20 years old, I say, I'll teach you my cultural icons if you teach me yours. And they do. They
Hell
constantly,
yeah.
yeah, they're constantly teaching me theirs, and it's fun. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and then hopefully Clinton will have a question in a follow up. But if not, we'll move on. It's what gives you the most optimism, Sasha?
I'm a very optimistic person by nature. I think, you know, just like we already talked about, everything in our human life is more or less a fiction we create, you know, including the future. You know, and if we're pessimistic, we're gonna create a pessimistic dystopian future, you know, and if we're optimistic, we can create uh, you know, a utopian future, even though that's a dirty word, of course. But that's our job, is to create a future that we want to live in. And I think, honestly, this is, for me, the most optimism I get is from the technological breakthrough of being able to leave planet Earth in spaceships. Because pretty much until the moment that we realized as a humanity that that's a possibility, it's like the Bible and all these ancient texts, their their end is apocalypse. It's basically that this planet will end and all of humans will die on it. And that apocalyptic mindset, I think, is what actually has made the past generations of people sort of strive to create apocalypse in their own time, because they're kind of afraid to die and miss out on what's going to happen after me. So like might as well just blow it all up now. You know, that's like really terrifying. And I think being able to leave the planet, and now with like all these reusable spaceships and cheaper and more accessible than ever, we actually have for the first time the idea that we don't humanity doesn't just have to die when the sun explodes or this planet becomes polluted. There is a hope to continue this weird vibration of thought elsewhere.
Really well put. It evoked. They asked McLuhan, "Are you an optimist or a pessimist. He says, I'm an apocalypse. We're fucked. But he really meant that he knew the etymology of the word apocalypse, which means to reveal. And he was like the Wizard of Oz, Toto. The dog pulls the curtain back and reveals the operating mode. And he was saying, look, just study what's behind, what's the hidden psychic effects, and you can reveal and flip into possible new metaphors and new questions. And lastly, and then Clinton, you're up. McLuhan learned a lot from Wyndham Lewis, who said that artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. Okay, Clinton, you're up. Thank you so much for facilitating us. And you got any follow-up question or comment? Go ahead, Clinton.
I'm really happy to host. It's been riveting. Hey, Sasha, when did you first get a computer and how deeply did you fall into it?
So my family got a computer for the first time when I was about 8 years old. We went to this sweaty Russian man's apartment that had pretty much every surface was covered with computer parts. And he pretty much in front of my eyes assembled a tower, and we carried out this monitor. And I basically, whenever my brother was not using it, I would play all of these pirated video games on it absolutely nonstop. And in fact, I credit computer video games with, teaching me English and history, because I actually, a couple of months later, I went on to write a little essay, a history essay about, this like invasion of Rome that I had learned from playing Age of Empires, which is a great video game. And the teacher said I plagiarized. Because it was too well written, and I was like, I didn't plagiarize. I conducted the campaign. I invaded Rome in the video game. Like, you don't know. So yeah, I played it pretty much stop, and the best thing about that computer was it soon became so overloaded with stuff that it would crash constantly, and the only way to kind of unfreeze it was to kick it in this little sweet spot. And I would just sit there like all night kicking this computer and getting it to go, and it's just ridiculous. It was like a horse. It was like a old horse that I had to just constantly beat.
Awesome, thanks. Gentlemen, it was an excellent conversation. I thank you for joining me in my little corner of the internet for this fantastic interview. Gerry, you're a fantastic interviewer, and Sasha, you really tackled those questions well.
Sasha, thank you.
You take my hat off to you guys.
And Clinton, thank you so much. You can flush this down the toilet right now, and I'm sure it'll be up on YouTube soon and never leave the universe. It will be shipped off to Mars, where everyone pees on everybody.
That's it. You've